Morning. So, Mounjaro. I'm just going to give you all the information and hopefully it helps you have a better understanding. But before we do anything, I like to think there's three questions we need to ask ourselves first. First, what's the root cause of your current issue? Okay. Where you're at right now, what's the outlying cause of it? Okay. And are you willing to do what's required to get your health in check and not rely on essentially Mounjaro anymore? And is it beneficial for you right now at this point while you're working on your overall health? Okay, you need to be able to answer those three questions, because sometimes we can look at something like this as a shiny object because X, Y, and Z, who's got no informed idea about it, heard it off someone else and they got a result. When ultimately it's just like anything else out there. It will get you a result until it doesn't, but we're starting to mess with things a lot more complicated, which you'll start to understand right now. So we want to make sure we can answer these questions first. Okay, so Mounjaro, what is it? So it activates a lot of things, big scary words. Okay, so it activates the glucose dependent insulin tropy polypeptide receptors and the glucagon like peptide 1 receptors. So don't fall asleep. So essentially it activates these two receptors, okay, in our body. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, you tested my reading here, terzepatide, okay, it's an active ingredient in Mounjaro. Okay, so Mounjaro is the thing, but this big word here is the active ingredient that activates these two things. Okay, so when you take Mounjaro, it activates these two receptors. Okay, and it almost mimics the actions of two naturally occurring hormones in the body, okay, that also activate these receptors. So it's almost like when you take Mounjaro, someone's gone in fancy dress to pretend to be a worker in a shop. Okay, that's what Mounjaro is pretending to be a worker in a shop to get the workers working that are already working anyway. But we do have hormones in the body that activate these receptors. Okay, so I hope that sort of makes sense. Now, why does this sort of matter? Well, this receptor first, this is released from the intestines when we eat, and it helps the body release insulin, okay, which then obviously helps control blood sugars. And it only increases insulin when blood sugar is high, okay? So that's what that receptor does. This receptor is also released when we eat, and it also releases insulin, and it suppresses appetite. So you can probably see why people are favouring Mounjaro. It also slows down gastric emptying, which basically means you don't go to the toilet as much, so you feel fuller for longer. It relaxes your stomach muscles so they don't force the food that you eat through the intestines quicker. Okay, it tightens the phlotic sphincter, which is basically the plug in the stomach that empties it into your intestines to get digested. Which, like I said there, it controls food release into the small intestine and essentially reduces contraction. So your body's got a natural function. When you eat food, you eat it, it gets digested, and it goes through the small intestine, the large intestine, out your bowel, and that's what happens. That's a natural process. So essentially, it slows all that down. That's what this one does. Okay, so this one regulates blood sugars, this one slows down emptying. Because of this slow release of food, you feel fuller, okay? Because obviously if you're not digesting it as quick, you feel fuller. And because of that, blood sugars are regulated, and therefore nutrient absorption is slowed down, okay? So essentially, both these receptors that are stimulated by Mounjaro, okay, these suppress glucagon secretion, which lowers blood sugar. Glucagon, where's all the glucose gone? It lowers your blood sugar, okay? So, like I said, the terzepatide or whatever it is, which is the active ingredient in Mounjaro, that mimics both of these hormones. It's essentially gone in fancy dress into a shop to stimulate the workers. It might be the boss, for example, to stimulate the workers to start doing the work. And essentially, it sticks to these receptors for longer than the hormones that your body naturally releases would, which means then obviously we have this slower down gastric emptying. You feel fuller for longer, blah 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 blah. It also may improve insulin sensitivity, which is why originally it was on the market as a type 2 diabetes drug, and then because of this, it slows down gastric emptying, you feel fuller for longer, regulates blood sugars. It's now being marketed as a weight loss drug, okay? So yeah, the combination of the two can be pretty attractive, okay, to manage diabetes and weight loss because of the what I've said. So what are the pitfalls of this? Well, worryingly, there's no set rules for how long it should be taken for, which is scary, because you don't really know what it could cause. You could overtake it, you could take too much of it, you could take it for too long, which you're not going to do, and then we don't know the long-term effects of the body. Also, as well, it should be used alongside lifestyle changes for optimal results, where unfortunately a lot of people look to something like this as a last resort. I'm not seeing results doing what I'm currently doing. You remove responsibility from the behavior change and you look at something like this, you get a quick win, you get a result, but then you go back to your habits that have kept you where you are right now, and ultimately we revert. And that's what's going to happen, and that would happen if you went to Slimming World, if you went to Weight Watchers. It'll be the same thing, because we actually haven't understood the reason why we are where we are. So this is why I said at the start, this is why we need to ask these questions. What is the root cause of the issue? Well, Mounjaro is not going to sort that out. I mean, if you're not in control of your habits, your routines, and your lifestyle, Mounjaro is not going to rectify that. It will get you a result, and then you'll stop taking it. Okay, so that's the first thing. Common side effects as well include nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, constipation, obviously because you're slowing down the release of food, abdominal pain, because obviously we're getting you bunged up, you're not eating as much, and you're not removing it as quick, pancreatitis, and there's even been signs of thyroid tumours as well. And again, it's because we're manipulating that internal natural function of the body, and we're essentially like slowing it down a little bit. B12 deficiencies are quite common as well, and other nutrient deficiencies leading to malnutrition for a few reasons, because obviously appetite is suppressed, and obviously if you're not hungry because you're full, essentially, and if your diet's not good in the first place, you're eating less, and less sometimes means less good stuff, which can lead to malnutrition. Like I said, if we go back to the root cause, if your diet's not where it needs to be, then if your diet's not great anyway, you're probably malnourished. And then like we're just eating less, which means we end up even more malnourished, and we haven't solved the issue. Mounjaro should not be used on people with type 1 diabetes, history of pancreatitis, pregnant or breastfeeding. That goes without saying, though. We don't want to mess about with that. Clinical trials have obviously shown Mounjaro to be effective because it slows everything down and regulates things. But we need to go back to answering the first three questions first, okay? Like, what's the root cause of your issue? Are you willing to do what's required to get your health in check, to rely on it anymore? And is this beneficial for you at this point whilst working on your overall health? Because like I said, if we don't really iron out the root cause of your issue, then we're going to stop taking it. And I know Mounjaro is quite expensive for what it is, because people are buying it. And we need to start asking if we really want to mess up with our body's natural thing, before we start rectifying these things first. So yeah, I hope that sort of helped. I know it's a bit of a mouthful here, and there's a lot of big words that I can't even say, to be honest, but it helps you understand where we're at. So essentially, Mounjaro, as a bit of a summary, is almost like a worker going into a shop pretending to be the boss, and when that boss walks in the shop, all the workers start like doing the stuff they should be doing properly, but he's not actually the boss, okay? And he sticks around a little bit, and basically stops people doing crappy stuff, slows down the digestion process, which then regulates your blood sugars, and that's why people see the results they see, because essentially they're eating less and stuff like that. Whereas we want to start having a look at, like I said, if we go back to here, the root cause first, before anything. But yeah, hope that helps. Let me know, and yeah, any more questions, just shoot me a message.